Merry Christmas, Bill.
Merry Christmas to you. As you may not know, the Scher household has surrendered in the war on Christmas. I am in front of General Douglas Fir behind me.
I hope it wasn't a bloody
battle. I'm a
battle.
surrendercrat, as you know, so I had no choice but to surrender to the Great War on Christmas.
Fair enough. I myself, my mother was a nun, but I was never baptized. But we do celebrate Christmas in the Carroll household, so 'tis the season.
I want to make one clarification point after our last segment. I noted we're talking about Romney's faith speech, and I made a point that when he talked about Jesus Christ being the Savior of all mankind, that was sort of a dog whistle to fellow Mormons, because that is the way, because Mormons don't look at Jesus as a personal Savior the way an evangelical Christian might. And there was a commenter in our thread that argued that he did that because evangelical leaders were displeased with Romney's attempts to use evangelical rhetoric. And said, hey, don't try taking our words and putting them in your mouth. You be who you are. And that's why he did what he did.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a huge rivalry between Mormons and evangelicals. Slate had a great retrospective on evangelicals and Mormons poaching into each other's territories. And
so there's definitely that friction there. I had speculated that he did that as a way to reach out to evangelicals while having a dog whistle to Mormons to keep them, on his team. But this one other commenter interpreted it differently. That was actually an olive branch to evangelicals to use Mormon phrasing.
It's a complicated minefield.
And I do have to wonder at this point, and maybe we should start with the Huckabee issue. I have to wonder if, after all these recent years of conservatives pushing for less separation of church and state, if perhaps some conservative bloggers wish they could take back some of that, seeing Huckabee and Romney joust over theology and people getting kind of queasy about that.
Well, you spend too much time on the corner, and you're definitely going to get that. The David Frums of the world, and the Rich Lowrys, and to a certain extent the Jonah Goldbergs are all looking at Huckabee's rise. And it's not so much Huckabee's rise, but also kind of the pushback they're getting from Huckabee's supporters. And they're saying, oh my God, this is a nightmare. How do we get into this? Jim Garrity has a great post on National Review called, is this the conservative crack-up? And it kind of takes on, again, not necessarily Huckabee, although we can talk about the latest conservative hits on Huckabee. But, Garrity's kind of more looking at what he finds, annoying about evangelicals who are saying, okay, this is our guy, we supported you guys through everything, so, you guys need to stop complaining about Huckabee. And, Garrity's point is, look, Bush was an evangelical too. It's not like, evangelicals have never been, a major part of the party. And, second of all, every part of the party is disaffected these days. Evangelicals said they haven't got anything, but, look at the anti-immigration wing of the Republican Party. They're not happy with Bush right now. The trade wing got screwed over by, steel tariffs. Here in the Heritage Foundation, everyone here is heads over heels mad about all the pork that's in the spending bill. Everybody in the Conservative Coalition is unhappy at this point. And his point is, for the evangelicals to say, oh, we're special, and oh, we've never had a seat at the table, it was really rubbing a lot of people the wrong way.
On the liberal side of the blogosphere, there has been some talk, particularly focused on people like Peggy Noonan, who she recently wrote that because of this rise of evangelical fervor around Huckabee, that maybe Ronald Reagan would not be considered pure enough.
Yeah, George Will wrote the same column weeks before Peggy did.
I'm sorry, the names of the liberal bloggers who did this are escaping me. I can try to remember them later on, but some of them had pointed out past Peggy Noonan columns that seem to embrace this blurring of church and state more enthusiastically. So one wonders why there's a shift now. What is it about Huckabee particularly that's making conservative bloggers and columnists scale back what they had said in recent years?
I think it's Bush fatigue. Jonah Goldberg has a post. Actually, it's a post just promoting his National Review article on Huckabee, and the title of the article is "Huck Compassionate Conservative." And for Jonah and for a lot of people who look at George W. Bush and they see No Child Left Behind, they see Medicare. They see, compassionate conservatism as basically the same social engineering that the left always wanted to do, except instead of it being based on, social sciences and, technocratic planners, it's based on the Gospels. And so they're basically saying, okay, we don't want the government running any of this stuff to begin with. We don't care if you're getting your inspiration from the Gospels or if you're getting, your inspiration, from the New Republic or whatever. We just want to go back to limited and small government. And so I think you are looking at for the two other legs of the stool that Romney is talking, or we talked about Romney signing last week. They're just looking at Huckabee's rise and saying, you know what, we've had 8 years of this, and the party's not doing well under it, and we don't want to go down that road again.
I saw also an interesting comment from on the Ace of Spades, saying we don't want another Republican. We don't want a Republican Jimmy Carter as our nominee. What do you think? Is that a critique of compassionate conservatism? Is that a critique of having someone who is openly and proudly religious being on the ticket? It seems very barbed.
It's definitely barbed. I mean, this is a Republican primary. We hit below the belt.
What happened to the 11th Commandment?
That's for later. No, I mean, yeah. As far as the blogosphere goes, the knives are definitely out. And as far as there has been some pushback, Eric Erickson at Red State had a post. It was either last weekend or very early this week, saying basically, as he calls it, the Manhattan D.C. corridor of GOP elites, really needs to stop hitting Huckabee with those Jimmy Carter-like vibes, because for the base that Huckabee has, and for people that appeal to Huckabee, that's part of his appeal, is that he's pissing off the elites, is that he is more down home and the rest of it. Now, of course, then later on in the week, after Rush Limbaugh lit into Huckabee, a Huckabee supporter told my old colleague at the Atlantic, Mark Amander, that Rush doesn't know what he's talking about, and Rush is part of this elite, and basically fired back at Rush Limbaugh. And this Eric, who was defending Huckabee earlier in the week, went right back up at Red State and was like, no, you just cannot attack Rush like this and expect to become the GOP nominee. Rush has fought the GOP D.C. New York establishment on immigration, on the Dubai Ports deal, definitely on Harriet Miers. If anyone's in touch with the base, it's Rush, and so the Huckabee people need to shut up. And yeah, I mean, there's been some other things Huckabee has said that has definitely upset conservatives. His books, people are reading his books more. He's just getting a lot more attention on his record and stuff that he's...
Well, David Corn, who is now blogging at MotherJones.com.
Moved over from The Nation.
He did a big piece about Huckabee's Kids Who Kill book, equating necrophiliacs with gays and environmentalists. And so that definitely got liberal, bloggers in the stir.
You look at the heartwarming, Huckabee you see at the debates, and the part he now plays with mainstream journalists, and I forget where I saw it, but it was an item about how Huckabee, when he was governor of Arkansas, sought some Rolling Stone reporter out about some event he had with Keith Richards, and that he is savvy in this sense, and he has definitely changed his tune and knows how to cater to the mainstream media, but he definitely has, to piss off liberals, enough of what he said in the past to upset them, and more important to conservatives, his books, just reek of this, nanny statism that just rubs them the wrong way.
Now, in past years, there's been a push by not just conservative bloggers, but also right-wing talk radio, Bill O'Reilly and the like, to push this war on Christmas narrative every December. And that seemed to be kind of petered out this year. I know there was something about it, something that was apocryphal that happened in Oklahoma that Red State was pushing that I think they were...
Something about a Wiccan symbol next to... Yeah, I saw that.
But Huckabee has sort of regenerated this with his TV ad and debates whether he intentionally put a floating cross behind him and has seemed to have gotten a lot of media coverage about it to the extent that liberals were criticizing it. That seems to have benefited Huckabee in Iowa. He can say, I'm fighting the war on Christmas against the evil liberal secular media. Are there folks in the conservative blogosphere that look at that and say, hey, that was a pretty deft move, and I like talking about this war on Christmas stuff too, and he seems pretty savvy in how he went about that. Maybe I should cut on some slack and say he annoys liberals in a way that makes me feel tingly inside.
I don't know if there's a whole lot of war on Christmas element in conservative blogosphere. I know, Bill. It's a favorite of Bill O'Reilly's and the rest of it, but you're not going to find a lot of that stuff in the corner. And if anything, most of them were ready to criticize Huckabee, if that conspiracy theory pans out. I for one, wouldn't buy the bookcase explanation. I don't think that they purposefully tried to. It doesn't even look like that much of a cross to me. It's just looks like a bookcase to me. But no, I think definitely there has been a truce in the war on Christmas this year, and I think it was Huckabee did get some good mileage out of it. I'll credit him for making best out of were some silly conspiracy theories, but I'm not buying a lot of it.
And it's not impressing the conservative blogosphere how he's handled that whole issue?
No, not at all.
Now, you told me last time we talked that there were no Huckabee bloggers, but I went on the Huckabee website, and there's like 100 blogs in his blog roll.
Yeah, but what's their traffic, and how active are they?
That is a very fair point, I'm sure. But I wonder if there is a corner of the blogosphere that there's perhaps an evangelical blogosphere that is somewhat removed from sort of the Beltway-based leading lights of the conservative blogosphere, folks at the corner, Hugh Hewitt.
Yeah, like Ron Paul, this is one of those things that I have investigated. And I did find a evangelical, blogosphere community that does link to each other, but they weren't very politically active. And even looking at, using Joe Carter, who used to write at Evangelical Outpost and now actually working with the Huckabee campaign, using his blog role as a starting off point, and going out from there. Again, most of the people he was linking to, were definitely evangelical, definitely were active blogging, but just weren't terribly political. So I don't know how much of a real blogging community out there. I mean, I think when you talk about communities that are affecting this race, I think the homeschooled community, which does not really have much of an online blogging element, is definitely a much larger factor in places like Iowa. So there are definitely small.
I did notice some homeschool blogs in his blog roll.
And I guess my only point is, yes, there are communities like that are fueling Huckabee's race. I just don't think there's that much bloggy about them.
Fair point. And maybe we should move on to the Democrats in just a bit, but I got the impression that there is some coalescing happening around Romney. He is sort of the first line of defense against Huckabee in Iowa. That it seems to be shaping up to be a two-man race.
I guess
there.
you can Pat Buchanan wrote an article saying it's either Mitt or Mike, and of course National Review last week endorsed Mitt Romney. So I guess you could say that, but I'm not really feeling a lot of momentum there. I mean,
bloggers are not coming out for Romney.
Bloggers are not coming out for Romney per se. If you were to take a snapshot of Catherine Jean Lopez, who heads up the corner, a year ago today, and now she's definitely a lot less supportive of Romney than she was then. Romney always had a very high profile here in D.C. National Review Online celebrated their 10th anniversary last year around this time, and Romney was at that event. He's very plugged into the established community here. I guess as you see, Ron Paul raising money, Huckabee showing up in polls, Giuliani faltering, Mitt stands out, but I don't think it's any much of a coalescing. Especially when you look at new numbers out of New Hampshire showing McCain now tied with Romney up there. Huckabee's doing stronger and stronger in Iowa. So I'm just not seeing, especially and moving back to the blogosphere. I can't think of any bloggers that have come out and said, okay, I give up. Mitt's my guy.
Giuliani has seemed to have a fade in the polls ever since the Judith Nathan sex on the city scandal.
I think if people look at pollster.com, we can see it. His downturn was well before that. Right
before that. In any event, is that translating into a paucity of Giuliani blogging on the conservative side?
Not a paucity. Patrick Ruffini, who actually worked for Giuliani and consulted for the campaign a little bit, but left for family reasons. He had triplets. Well, not him. His wife did. Anyways, he has a post up at Town Hall this week that's basically, what went wrong for the Rudy campaign. Almost you get them a lot in D.C., these pre-postmortems. Basically, he doesn't say that Giuliani didn't have a lot of issues to run him, but he said all of his issue ads in New Hampshire have pretty much fallen flat. And he also blamed McCain's early demise, saying that because McCain faltered so early in August on immigration, Giuliani became the front runner and the lightning rod for everyone else. And that also because of his strategy to avoid Iowa and New Hampshire, the storyline was allowed to become, Romney versus, the field in Iowa, which eventually became Romney versus Huckabee in Iowa, and then allowed the story out of New Hampshire become McCain's comeback, and that his banking on February 5th, looking back on it, may not have been the best strategy.
All right, then. Shall we shift to the Democrats?
Yes. We have a big battle royale between Barack Obama and a non-blogger, but still a force in progressive circles, Paul Krugman.
You can almost argue Krugman's an honorary blogger.
Well, actually, he's a blogger now, right?
And he blogs on NewYorkTimes.com now.
So.
Yes. And I think, probably more than any other mainstream media columnist, I think Krugman has his ear to the blogosphere.
And more importantly, probably the most respected.
Are very,
probably the most respected.
Certainly very respected amongst liberal progressive bloggers.
If you had to pick someone in the mainstream media that was the most widely and deeply respected in the progressive blogosphere, who would you name?
Paul Krugman, Keith Olbermann. Those are
You're putting Keith in that league?
Your two.
Fair enough.
Well, but Krugman is different in that I think Krugman is an engine of understanding of policy and economics.
I agree. Keith and Paul are different.
And so I think Krugman influences bloggers, and I think to some degree bloggers have influenced Krugman as far as his understanding of how politics works.
So do you want to run down Krugman's differences with Obama, or shall I?
Well, Krugman, I'm happy to
go for it.
Give the rundown. Krugman started making a policy critique of Obama vis-a-vis Clinton and Edwards on the subject of universal health care and individual mandates. The three of their plans are pretty similar, actually. And so one of the few clear differences is that Clinton and Edwards say it's got to be a mandate that all individuals have to have health insurance. Presumably, in my state of Massachusetts, there's an individual mandate. There is a financial penalty if you don't get it. And Obama would say, well, that's not the way I want to approach this, because I don't think the problem is that they don't want it, it's that they can't afford it. And so I'm going to make sure that the cost is affordable. And once that happens, I'm confident that people are going to join the program. And I believe he said it previously, he hasn't emphasized this point, that if he didn't get to 100% coverage, he would then do something else to fill the gap. But Krugman took the stand that having a mandate was critical to it being a truly universal plan, although I think that is a disputed point. I know in my organization, Campaign for America, well, not within my organization, but Jacob Hacker is someone that we've worked with. He supports individual mandate, but he said it's really not the end-all, be-all. Robert Reich takes Obama's side in this debate. But Krugman's got the big megaphone at the New York Times and has really driven this point that you really need to have this to be universal. And not only has Obama not taken that stance, he's attacked Clinton and Edwards with conservative-ish rhetoric about government in making his point. Obama's camp responded with an online hit piece on Krugman, essentially calling him hypocritical, saying he said nice things about Obama's plan before and now was changing his tune. I think the Obama team was somewhat cherry-picking past Krugman columns, and then it seemed to really escalate from there, where Krugman started making a broader political argument, both in his column on his blog and in a recent interview that he gave to Talking Points Memo.
Yeah, he wasn't shy about getting the message out there, was he?
No. I mean, he's revving this up and making the point that Obama, fundamentally doesn't understand what's going to be politically necessary to take on insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies. That you can't just be, you can't play footsie with them. There's going to be a big confrontation. It's unavoidable. And if you don't understand that, you're going to get steamrolled. And that very much plays into, even though Krugman's not certainly backing a candidate as a columnist, that's very much in line with what John Edwards' main argument is for his own case to be the nominee, that you have to fight big corporations, you have to fight insurance companies, otherwise you won't get big change. And I think within the blogosphere and the liberal blogosphere, Krugman's critique carries great resonance, and that was somewhat re-emphasized this week when Obama was asked if he would have Republicans in his cabinet. He didn't actually say that he would. It was somewhat misreported by ABC, but he did say in the course of answering, he listed Republicans he respected, like
Chuck
Lugar and Arnold Schwarzenegger. So that sparked a round of blogosphere criticism of Obama. Open Left, Paul Rosenberg, particularly focusing on Schwarzenegger, saying that people should not be touting him as a great environmentalist, that he has a lot of hypocrisy in his record in California. Sorry for the minor glitch there, but I'll just pick up where I left off with Obama Krugman. Paul Rosenberg at Open Left had criticized Obama for entertaining, or seeming to entertain, Schwarzenegger as a cabinet choice, criticizing his full environmental record.
And don't forget the Democrats are girly men comment.
Of course. And also on politics, David Dreyer, speaking from a California primary standpoint, was trying to assess if touting Schwarzenegger as a cabinet pick or appearing to would hurt him in the primary, and he thought probably not, but he did think there is certainly a faction of California Democrats. Mind you, Schwarzenegger got a fair amount of Democratic votes when he was reelected, but there's definitely a faction of the party, and probably disproportionate in the primary, that sees Schwarzenegger as a phony and a hypocrite, and so he indicated there might be some potential for problems for him. This sort of feeds into a larger blogosphere concern with Obama, as far as a lot of gratuitous bipartisanship talk and fears that he's not drawing sharp enough contrast between the parties to build the requisite mandate and get real change done. But having said that, there seems to be a race where that blogosphere concern is not necessarily driving the poll numbers, because obviously Obama is doing pretty well in Iowa right now. But it's certainly, if Edwards does have a surprise showing in Iowa, which some people think he might, maybe it's because he was offering a message that not only bloggers were responding, but also other voters in Iowa.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely feeds into the kind of the larger critique of Obama basically that he's all talk. He has this, or maybe not necessarily all talk, but that he's kind of naive in a way. I have confessed my Atrios fandom earlier, so I just have to quote an Atrios post. As always, he's short. If anyone ever best captured brevity is the soul of wit, it's Atrios. But he had a post called commenting on this whole thing called "Shorter Candidates," and it was Obama. The system sucks, but I'm so awesome that it'll melt away before me. Edwards. The system sucks, and we're going to have to fight like hell to destroy it. And then Clinton. The system sucks. I know how to work it, and I know how to work within it more than anyone. And I think that in 3 sentences, pretty much sums up the whole Democratic primary.
That's true.
You died.
And certainly I think a lot of leading liberal bloggers certainly embrace the Edwards formulation there. Although there's obviously other parts of the blogosphere that are impressed enough with Obama's personal characteristics that have gravitated to him as well. But I think as far as the substantive critique that a lot of liberal bloggers have of the Democratic Party and of how the media works and that sort of thing, Edwards is definitely speaking more to that. And we'll see how that plays out on the ground in Iowa. It seems right now to be pretty neck and neck. Yeah,
and this is kind of a sentiment that you see across Obama's rhetoric and campaign tactics. He does it does seem to be a core belief that he is just so magnanimous and such a skillful speaker and politician that he'll just be able to have opposition literally melt away before him. Josh Marshall flagged a comment from the Obama camp when he said that he was the most scrutinized candidate in the race, and Josh Marshall was like, is he kidding? He can't be possibly serious. Hillary Clinton, of course, has been under way more scrutiny, and it's just this kind of naivete that Obama really hasn't gone through the ringer yet. The vast right-wing conspiracy hasn't trained their guns on him yet, and people like Josh Marshall think that he doesn't really quite understand what is around the corner for him if he gets a nomination, and the opposition just might try to fight back as opposed to melting away.
Well, I happen to think Obama's not that naive.
His rhetoric would seem to suggest so.
He's trying to think that sort of rhetoric is what it would entail to rise above it. But he has dealt with these attempts to have him be seen as a Muslim, for the entirety of this campaign. And I actually think he has handled that pretty well. He hasn't overreacted so much to say, "Oh, good Lord, don't ever think I'd be an awful, stinky Muslim."
Well, he can't because part of his coolness, his reason for being, is that he does have a Muslim grandfather and that he has lived overseas. So he of course can't distance himself from it because it's part of his stated appeal.
And so what he has said is, if I was Muslim, I would tell you, which I actually think is a very straightforward way to handle it. And of course, he has joined the cavalcade of Christmas ads. This
everyone has one now.
Everyone has one now, and I think the subtext for Obama doing that is to say, hey, I celebrate Christmas too. It's not seen as, and because everyone else is doing it, it doesn't seem as particularly gratuitous on his part. So I think he has pretty deftly handled that, in spite of the fact that the Clinton campaign seemed to be trying to dredge up the rumors.
I don't know. I haven't seen them being connected to the Muslim rumors. I have seen them being connected to the cocaine rumors.
That's the Bob Kerrey secular madrasa comment.
Well, I don't know how much control Clinton's camp has over Bob Kerry's mouth.
Well, there is a debate about that, but certainly coming after the Bill Shaheen comments about Obama's past drug use, which
the drug use definitely has the Clinton camp's fingerprints all over it.
Right. So the two together, at minimum, give the appearance that there is some sort of larger muck campaign at foot, and I think a lot of bloggers have really recoiled at that. So whatever concerns they have about Obama and his political strategy, they found particularly distasteful. Both the drug use and the secular madrasa comments, and Obama might recognize that he is going to, even if there is some consternation about his approach right now, he is going to have a blogosphere in his corner to help push back on attacks like that if he was the nominee.
Oh yeah, whoever the nominee is, the Talking Points memos, Daily Koses, Fire Dog Lakes of the world will all be there to support the nominee 100%. I have no doubt about that.
Presumably they would for Clinton as well. But I think that there's the greatest amount of antipathy, I think, for the way the Clintons have handled their campaign. They did not care for Bill Clinton claiming he was a war opponent from the beginning. They don't like the substance of the attacks right now. That would be an interesting thing to see. If she was the nominee, how much would liberal bloggers, rally around? And I've talked about this in the past. A lot of liberal bloggers got in the game in disgust at the way Democrats handled the Clinton wars, and not standing foursquare for Bill Clinton at the time, and pushing back on media narratives then. And that's kind of been turned around somewhat as they see both Bill and Hillary seeming to do right-wing style things against their own.
Yeah, but at the same time, a lot of the kind of base infrastructure of the progressive blog sphere is not Clinton-owned, but definitely Clinton-affiliated. Media Matters, Think Progress, Center for American Progress. That's a Podesta shop. Even though
Podesta, I think, is considered very close to the Clintons, Think Progress has not shied away from criticizing a Clinton when it would seem to be called for.
You'd really have to point out some anti-Clinton Think Progress posts, because I can't think of any off the top of my head.
I'll try to dig one up.
You prove me wrong, Bill. Let's almost move away from White House 08, because not really, because there's a presidential candidate involved. We'll move over to FISA, which...
Well, this was really the big story for the liberal blogosphere this past week. And Chris Dodd, dark horse presidential candidate, was at the center of it. He has made restoring the Constitution his signature issue. And that really speaks to a number of leading liberal bloggers, and particularly folks at Fire Dog Lake, Glenn Greenwald, who's now at Salon.com, Atrios, many of the folks at Daily Kos. When this FISA bill came down the pike that included immunity for telecommunication companies that had illegally or allegedly illegally handed personal customer records over to the White House, Dodd led the fight against some of his own Senate Democrats to filibuster a FISA bill that included that telecom immunity. And even though, so Dodd did this. Dodd's been pushing this issue for a while. He's made it part of his campaign appeals. He's put up YouTube videos. He's had email appeals. Bloggers have been publicizing them a lot. And then so when it came crunch time this past week, the bill was on the Senate floor. Bloggers, particularly Fire Dog Lake and Atrios, had put phone numbers up of key senators, rallied people around, pressuring their senators. I believe Dodd has gotten a lot of positive emails and some additional fundraising this week because of it. And even though they lost the first cloture vote, they did not succeed in having a filibuster of 41 plus votes.
Yeah, they lost it by a lot. It was like 76 to 10.
I think it was 76 to 10. But Dodd had other parliamentary maneuvers in his quiver. And Harry Reid looked at all the ways that Dodd was planning to gum up the works and said, I got too much to do before the holiday break. I'm going to have to punt until January to deal with this. And bloggers took this as a big victory, that there was enough momentum behind this to get enough senators to stall this thing. And it buys them time to try to drum even more. This is an issue that's not gotten that much attention in the mainstream media. The hope was going to be that it would generate more attention and generate more support for their cause. And I think there was then some frustration after the fact that this was treated as a back page story, just a minor delay, and will be an inevitable bill that gets passed. And a sense that there's a disconnect between what is important to a number of liberal bloggers and a number of Americans and what the mainstream media is covering.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to go ahead and side with the mainstream media here. I really think it's just a stay of execution. The Senate had the energy bill on its plate. It had the omnibus bills, which were already overdue. This was something that wasn't going to be overdue until February. And, Reid thought this was going to be a slam dunk, and it turned out to be, a little more of a three-pointer. So he said, we'll go ahead and pull this and wait till February. But, no, the pushback was not strong, but definitely there. Jane Hampshire had a roundup of excuses, and Glenn Greenwald flagged, explanation by the Washington Post reporter that had Reid's spokesman basically saying, we're going to wait till after January to have this vote, or after the first primary in January, so presidential politics doesn't affect the Senate's business. And Glenn pointed out that this was an pretty obvious slight at Dodd. And I agree, it was. Basically what Reid's spokesman was saying was that, the only reason Dodd cares about this is because of his presidential campaign. And, Glenn then refuted that, talking about how, Russ Feingold had got the same treatment when he was thinking of running, but he's just as opposed now as opposed to when he did running.
This is definitely causing a rift between Harry Reid, and the blogosphere. They're not happy with how he tried to railroad this bill through. They're not happy with comments like that seem to malign someone who seemed to be fighting the good fight. And now you saw in a Huffington Post, I believe Nico Pitney had posted a report that there is some momentum to have Dodd replace Harry Reid as majority leader after this presidential campaign season is through.
I've seen more than one rumbling of that, what is the end game for Dodd here? Because, God bless him, it doesn't appear as though he's going to win the nomination. But he has definitely built up a strong following, and in the blogosphere. And Howard Dean is now head of the DNC. That's definitely worth something these days. So I wouldn't be terribly surprised if we saw some type of campaign like that.
But it definitely speaks to I think to sum up our whole segment, where you're seeing some new fractures on the right that are evidenced in the blogosphere between evangelicals and other parts of the conservative movement. You're seeing some fracturing on the left on these issues of constitutional authority, checks and balances, and national security. It's a very, very fluid environment out there. I don't think anyone really knows how it's going to shake out until, and it's only part of the story, but until the primary season is finished.
Yeah, I would only say this, I would definitely say it's going to be either Hillary or Obama, but on the Republican side, I really don't know.
See, I'm the opposite. I feel very confident it's going to be Romney at this point. But I don't think you can count out Edwards in Iowa. I would probably give the edge to Obama right now. But, in my talking to folks in Iowa, feel that Edwards has not just a great organization that he's built up over a long period of time, but a lot of second-choice support that could pay off on caucus night. I just interviewed folks from ruralvotes.com for my Liberal Oasis radio show. And one of them there felt that Edwards would at least have a strong second.
Well, I hate to be a cornfield hater, but I just, for all the focus that the media puts on Iowa, I just don't think there's whoever wins it or places well there is going to have that much of a bounce out of it.
Well, it was also talked about during this interview that the rural folks in New Hampshire feel very independent and don't feel that they're compelled to do just what Iowa does. But I would think, because the two races, and there's definitely a difference in their compositions, particularly on the Republican side, you have a far more greater concentration of social conservatives in Iowa than you do in New Hampshire. But the races are so compressed. You have Iowa Thursday and New Hampshire Tuesday. You have only, you have the Iowa race Tuesday. Friday is a day of media toasting the winner. You don't have a lot of time to offer a fresh message to cut against the whatever media coverage is going to come out of Iowa. So it's going to be pretty hard to stand your ground. I mean, it depends on who wins, of course. For example, if Huckabee wins, I think McCain has an opportunity to say, hey, don't do what the social conservatives did in Iowa, vote for an independent like me. But if a guy like Romney wins, who has a lot of money in machine, or any of the Democrats wins, whether it be Clinton, Obama, or Edwards, all who I think are at least considered acceptable by their primary electorates, I would think Iowa would have a big impact on New Hampshire.
Well, we'll have to find out. We'll be doing the blog, This Week in Blog, coming in the new year, and we'll see which one of us is right. Okay, Bill. Talk to you next time.
Merry Christmas.